Hello and welcome back to Making Better Bites. It is your host, Adrienne, here with you again today. And I am so excited that actually for the first time ever, Making Better Bites podcast has gone video. You can now watch the podcast as well as listen to it on all audio podcasting platforms, anywhere that you currently listen to podcasts. But if you're joining me from YouTube, hello. And yeah, this is the first time we're doing it. So I'm really excited. I'm also feeling really nervous because I have not recorded myself visually doing the podcast before. So bear with me. But yeah, I've been working on this every day for the past several days just to get everything set up and looking nice. And I'm really happy with my outcome so far. And I hope that you guys enjoy it as well. Like the visual setup and everything. But I don't want to harp on that because obviously we have lots of listeners coming in on the podcast portion and you can't see what's going on. But if you want to, it's a great opportunity to go check out on YouTube, or I'm also sharing clips on my social media, my Instagram page or my TikTok. So find me there as well. Both of those platforms are at betterbites_RDN, and I will link them down in the notes so that you can find me easier. But yeah, today we are in the new year. Welcome to 2023. I'm currently recording still only in 2022, but yeah, I wanted to make sure that we were starting off the year first Tuesday available with a brand new episode, because obviously I've taken the last 2 weeks off and kind of the last 3 weeks because my last episode of the year was like unexpected and I just had like some technical difficulties that I wasn't expecting or planning to originally have. So that was kind of unfortunate, but I'm looking forward to a better, brighter new year and lots of great things to come ahead, most of which I don't really have planned yet, but I know it's going to be exciting and fun. So thank you for joining me here in 2023. I'm so glad to be here. As you maybe noticed from the title of this episode, we are going to be talking about, let me get situated. We are going to be talking about healthy hormones in the new year. I know that the new year is a time for people to make New Year's resolutions, and they have a lot of big goals and ideas of what they would like to see for themselves to be their best year yet, to make a lot of changes and adjustments in their life, and just feel better and healthier overall. So whether you are someone who is currently on birth control and is looking to leave taking birth control, if you're someone who has recently stopped taking it, or someone who is new in your journey of understanding your menstrual cycle and wanting to like begin navigating your begin to navigate your menstrual cycle, or maybe you're someone who is planning to have a baby, hopefully this year, and you're wanting to conceive and kind of get everything with your hormones straightened out before you head into that. There's a lot of different stages of life, and all of them as a female, your hormones and your menstrual cycle and your personal health and your reproductive health are important for. So welcome if you fall under any of those categories. I know for myself, I've fallen under many of them at some point in the last few years. And so, yeah, it's just exciting to be looking forward to having a fresh start. So I am personally a big believer that you can start new habits. You can develop new habits at any given time. You could decide to change your mind and do something new in the next hour. It wouldn't have to be January 1st or the first Monday of the year, the first Monday of the month, or anything like that. So if you're joining me at any other time than when this episode first airs, you are also welcome. And I'm so excited for you to be on this journey as well. Because yeah, at any given time, you could be changing your habits and making new decisions for yourself. And for that, I'm really, really proud of you and happy for you to have made that decision for yourself. So yeah, just introducing in today's episode, talking about different habits that you could begin, just little things that you could start doing that are going to make your body feel better, make your life easier, and just changes that you can make that would be beneficial for your hormones. So we're just going to be talking about that today, kind of a good way to approach it and where you should be starting from like a dietitian, hormone, nutrition standpoint / person who's also probably been in your shoes or been in some sort of situation similar to you. And yeah, if you are listening to the podcast on any of the podcasting platforms, or if you are watching me on YouTube right now, either way, I would like for you to go ahead and subscribe though to the podcast, and follow me that way, especially if this is your first time listening, that you don't lose the podcast. And when I post again next Tuesday, you get a reminder and you can find it easily. And you're informed on when the episodes are airing. I usually try to air them every Tuesday in the morning, like 5 or 6 a.m. So if you want to listen to it like on your commute or before school or while you're getting ready, like that kind of thing, when it first comes out, hopefully you should be able to. But if not, some days I definitely get a little behind and it's not up till Tuesday night, but I always try to get it up. And that's another reason to follow me on social media, because if something comes up where I can't get the podcast out for any reason, like at the end of this year, I was sick for a little bit and I couldn't get a podcast out. It just wasn't going to happen. I update people and inform them on social media, because there's no way really for me to inform you on the podcast like directly. Like I'm not going to post a podcast that's like 30 seconds long that says, hi, checking in, no podcast for this week. So if you're missing me and you're wondering where I am, again, that's another good reason to be following on socials. So, one last thing before I start is just my health disclaimer that none of this is intended to be professional medical advice for you to follow. Please always go with your trusted healthcare professionals if you have any questions or you want to make any health changes. I'm not trying to prescribe or diagnose anyone through any of my podcast episodes. It's strictly supposed to be information for you to apply, or for you to know, just information for you to use, and then moving forward, discussing with your healthcare professionals, because I don't know your health. I'm not your personal professional working on like your medical chart and understanding your medical records and your history and all of that. So yeah, I just have to throw that little medical disclaimer out there. And then that'll be it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into today's podcast episode, the meat and bones of it all. So first up, we are going to talk about habits versus goals. And on my notes, I put habits are greater than goals, which is something I believe, but I mean it in more of like a verbiage and an intention sort of way, because even myself, like a lot of people use the word goal interchangeably for things that could just be healthy habit changes in your life. And so I don't want you to feel like, oh my gosh, I have set like all of these different like goals that I have for myself that I was going to accomplish this year, and now I have to completely scrap that, because it's not true. A lot of your goals could also be already habits, positive, healthy habits that you could be changing, but they also, if they're not exactly in the mindset of being a habit and a lifelong thing, could be adjusted into like a habit mindset. So what I mean by habits are greater than goals then, like if you're looking at what you wanted to do this year, how do you know which one you personally are focusing on? And so to me, when you have a habit, it's going to be something that affects you, or it becomes part of your life, your day to day. So basically your routine and what you do every single day is made up of lots of habits, right? Like when you brush your teeth in the morning, like that's a habit. You go to the bathroom when you first wake up, another habit, whether or not you eat breakfast, and then basically so on and so forth, and how your day goes, like what you do at work or what you do in your home. Just basically every little action and step that you take every day becomes a habit for you. And those habits can either be positive habits or they could be negative habits. I mean, they could be neutral habits too, but yeah, could be helping you with your health or not. So an example of a positive habit that you would have every day would be eating eating breakfast like within an hour of waking up. An example of a negative habit that could be causing harm or negative outcome would be skipping breakfast and just drinking a large coffee in the morning instead. So both of those are habits involving like your first meal of the day. One would be what I would look at as a healthy habit, and one would be like a unhealthy habit, I guess. Although I don't like using that word. So you got to be careful how, again, it just comes down to like your intentions in using it. When it comes to goals, so in my mind, when I think of goals, I think of course, still like actionable steps, but ones that wouldn't necessarily become part of your everyday routine beyond reaching an endpoint. So like for me, a habit would be something that becomes lifelong, that I incorporate into my routine and moves forward with me, and I build upon as it's doing good things in my life. And a goal then would just be like a means to an end, or acting on a means to an end, the end point being the goal. And then once you hit that goal, your actions end there. So a goal could be, I want to lose 15 pounds. And then the things that you're going to do to lose those 15 pounds, once you have hit the 15-pound weight loss, whether they were positive or negative things that led to the weight loss. Oftentimes people struggle then with maintaining and continuing that on in their life. And I think it's because they haven't done things to develop a habit. They've just done actions to then get them into the end goal. So if you were, again, wanting to lose weight, looking back at the habits that I just said, the positive and the negative habits, wanting to lose weight, if you're wanting to lose 15 pounds and that's your goal, and in wanting to lose those 15 pounds, you might start eating breakfast every day so that you feel more satisfied with your meals. But then once you get to that 15-pound weight loss and you've accomplished like your goal, then a lot of times people like stop that action, or they have a hard time continuing that action. I guess the breakfast thing actually was not a good example because that's something sustainable and maintainable. So never mind, scratch that concept because it's not fitting. And what I'm trying to explain, basically it's like, okay, so you want to lose 15 pounds. And so you decide that you're going to cut out desserts in order to lose the 15 pounds. That's much more of like something that people do. Something restrictive. And then you reach your 15-pound weight loss, and then you're like, oh, great. Like, I have lost my 15 pounds, but like, I feel like I can never eat dessert again. Well, that's not the case. But you didn't have a healthy habit that you developed in order to lose the 15 pounds. Or like, you get to the 15-pound weight loss and you're like, yay, I hit my goal. Now I can start eating dessert again. And then you go back and you're like, have deprived yourself all of this time of not having dessert. Then you start eating it again, and then you become in a calorie surplus again. It's like you never made a positive habit change in order to get to that weight loss, if that makes sense. So that's more of an example, I think, of how it's like a mindset when it comes to habits versus goals. So basically what I want you to think about then when it comes to developing what I would call habits is to think about what your ideal self would look like, what your ideal realistic health, ideal actions, ideal day-to-day, what every single day would look like for you ideally. So I'm going to use myself as an example and things that I did with my habits and how I came to the conclusion and the solution that I did. Basically, what I started with was that I had hypothyroidism. And I didn't have any medical reason specifically to know that I had hypothyroidism. Like, I'd been checked for an autoimmune disease and I didn't have that. And I didn't have, none of the biomarkers came back that I would have an autoimmune disease. And I didn't have anything like physically wrong with my thyroid. And some of my family members had it, but like hypothyroidism isn't exactly considered hereditary. So you can be more likely to have hypothyroidism if your family members do, but that doesn't mean that you received the hypothyroidism like genetically from them. And so then I was like, well, I am having symptoms of hypothyroidism. Like my blood work is coming back with that, showing that. And, so I was on medication for it, and I did not want to be on this medication anymore. So I found, as a dietitian, I should say, I approached this with a dietitian lens and did research for myself. And by did research, I mean, I read research articles and, looked through all of the information and used the science brain and background and understanding and all of that I have as a dietitian, and looked into like, what are the nutrients that your body needs in order for your thyroid to function at maximum capacity and to be able to function well enough that you don't need to be on medication, because I didn't want to be taking the medication every day. That was a habit that I wanted to get rid of, or like I looked at as negative. So once I gathered this information, like that was my ideal self. My ideal health self was not having to take medication for my thyroid every day anymore. And so I gathered the information and I learned about the different micronutrients that your body needs in order for your thyroid to produce enough of your thyroid hormones, and also for your thyroid to be healthy and not have inflammation, and also for your thyroid to be able to activate your thyroid hormones. And I looked at like what those nutrients were, thought about my day-to-day life and what my typical diet looked like at the time, and then thought about how I could incorporate something positive to incorporate one of those nutrients I knew I wasn't getting enough of. So for me, what I started with then was was eating a Brazil nut every day, because one of the micronutrients that your body needs in order for your thyroid to function properly is called selenium, and selenium is a mineral that is found very high in Brazil nuts, and actually 1 to 2 Brazil nuts a day, depending on the source and the size of the Brazil nut, can give you 100% of your daily needs of selenium. So I then took that information and I said, okay, a habit that I can develop is eating a Brazil nut every day. That's something really simple, a good place to start with a healthy habit that I can build on, and I can do that the rest of my life. Like I could see myself, especially in the beginning, of course, you need to be like daily, much more consistent with it. Like I could see myself eating Brazil nuts for the rest of my life as part of my regular diet, right? That's something pretty simple. I'm open to it. It wasn't my favorite flavor, but since I have adapted and found ways that I really enjoy eating it, and I made it work for my life. And then over time, of course, I built other habits, but really, truly, when I started, all I wanted to do was to eat that Brazil nut, to get the selenium, to help my thyroid, because ideally I didn't want to take thyroid medication every day. And long story short, I ended up getting to the point where, with a lot of other things, not just taking the Brazil nut every day. So I'm not saying that, again, this is not a prescriptive podcast episode, not medical advice, but what I did for myself did get me to the point where then I no longer have the symptoms of hypothyroidism. And so then I no longer need that medication in my life. So I've gotten to that point. It's been pretty stable. It took me like 6 months to a year of slowly adding in different habits. And then I got to the point where I'm no longer taking the medication, but I still incorporate those habits into my regular life because I need them, and they're healthy habits, and they're things that will stick with me and prolong through my whole life in order to have a healthy functioning thyroid, for example. So that's just an example of like my life and how I applied this concept to my life, the habits and the goals, and kind of how I think a lot of people look at goals and how habit changing can affect you. Trying to think of what the book's called. Atomic Habits. I can't think of the author, but I will put it in the show notes if you want to look it up. I have yet to finish this book, but I started it. I read quite a bit of it, and I got a lot of really positive information out of it. And that is kind of where I started to initially see this concept in my own life and like applying it to my own life. Obviously, also with my education background as being a dietitian. But yeah, so I kind of got some of the ideas from there. And the one that really sticks out is that it's so much easier and so much more sustainable to just try to be 1% better every single day than it is to try and make massive like jumps and changes in your life. And I think that could maybe be really especially encouraging today when this episode is going out, because Tuesday is what? I think it's January 3rd. I think the first day of the year is on Sunday. So Tuesday, January 3rd, you might already be feeling discouraged that you didn't get up and get going and do everything that you said you were going to do on Monday or even today. And you feel like you've already failed for the new year. But if you go and approach it with just being 1% better every day and just doing something small for yourself, like a Brazil nut or whatever your Brazil nut is in your life, how that can grow over time and just be a lot more sustainable and a lot more beneficial for your life. So don't be discouraged and just focus on doing 1%, not 7%, not 40%, not 100%, because we're never going to be 100. Going like that is insane exponential growth. If you think about like from yesterday to today, you're going to be 100% better than you were yesterday. Like no way. But in 100 days, you could look back on this moment and let's see, 100 days is just over 3 months. So mid-April, you could be looking back on yourself right now, listening to this podcast and think, wow, every single day I chose to show up and be 1% better for myself. And now I've reached 100 days and I am 100% better, exponentially, leaps and bounds above where I was on Tuesday, January 3rd, or whatever your starting day is right now. So just think about it that way and how much better and easier that could be for you. And don't be feeling discouraged. Don't feel down. So going on then from my little pep talk and habits versus goals and what that kind of means to me. We are going to say, so Adrienne, you're giving us all this advice on getting started and not stressing, but like, all right, I have a lot of ideas, but where exactly do I start? Like, where do I start? What does this mean? Where do I go from here? What would you say as a hormone dietitian? And I am so glad that you asked because I have some answers for you. So I've kind of broken this down into 2 segments. Where to start, part 1 is like your health and your body. And then where to start, part 2 is going to be nutrition. So if you want to have healthy, balanced hormones and healthy hormone habits in the new year, let's start with the body. Things that you need to make sure that you're focusing on or that you've already checked off or whatever the case may be. Just some ideas for you on where to start and what kind of things are going to be important for you. First up is your body, your health. What is going on with your hormones? Like for me, like I mentioned in my example, is that I personally was struggling with hypothyroidism as my symptoms. I mean, that was just one thing. If you're new here, that was just one of many things that I have like healed and supported my body through and continue to support my body with. But yeah, that was just one thing. But maybe you have one thing and maybe you have 10 things. But, you know, do you actually know what is going on with your hormones? Because a lot of people have like feel like they have hormone trouble, or they hear about it on the internet, or they hear other people's stories and experiences, but they're not sure what's going on for themselves. So then that leads me into making sure that you have a trusted healthcare professional. That is, sorry, this is my first time doing it, so I just need to keep adjusting the microphone to get it in the right spot. But hopefully the audio is still good. Anyways, do you have trusted healthcare professionals that are willing to work with you and to listen to you and your needs and your concerns and what you're wanting your end goal to be? Because without trusted healthcare professionals and without people you can go to, it's going to be a lot harder. It's still possible. I don't know if it was a little bit easier for me when it comes to navigating that, just because I am technically I am a healthcare professional. I work in the healthcare field. That's what I was educated in, being a registered dietitian, my background with biology and all of that, biochemistry, nutrients, vitamins, minerals, Krebs cycle, etc. But so I don't know. I can't really speak to the amount of support that is needed by a person who might not have any kind of health background, but you need to know what level of support you personally feel like you need and make sure you get it, because it is out there. It might not, ideally it would be your gynecologist or your standard professionals that you can easily get appointments with and covered by insurance and can prescribe things and all sorts of, the more they can encompass. But that's not always going to be the case. And you might have a lot of people or different types of people on your team. So just making sure that you have people that you can go to, though, and that you are taking care of your health and taking care of your body as a female. So important. And then the other thing when it comes to your hormones, your health, and your body is, do you know and understand your menstrual cycle? Because, at least when it comes to my personal approach, because I talk a lot about fertility and reproductive care. Obviously, the thyroid isn't directly your reproductive health in the same way that your estrogen and progesterone production are going to be, or in the same way with your ovaries and your uterus and all of those kind of things. It's not the same, but it's slightly related. It is related. So, but there can be other hormones outside of that, if you're thinking hormones could be your insulin with your blood sugar and all of those kind of things. So, but when it comes to focusing on your reproductive health and your reproductive hormones, your sex hormones, we need to make sure that you understand your menstrual cycle, because without having an understanding or a tracking of your menstrual cycle, it's really difficult to be able to pinpoint it as a healthcare professional. Getting your doctor on board, getting other team members on board is going to be more difficult, because you're not going to have as much concrete evidence to be able to show them biomarkers, signs and symptoms and specifics of things that you have going on in your body that you personally know of are abnormal. So I do want to say, if you are currently on hormonal birth control, because your body is being supported by those hormones and is not going through the cycle every month, the same kind of information is not going to apply to you. While things that I share could be beneficial because they're just healthy habits and healthy things to do and healthy foods to eat, you're not going to see the same kind of change, because your body's not able to change because it's being regulated and shut down by hormonal birth control. In order for you to be able to change your hormones and to create a positive outcome and have a positive effect on them, you have to be going through your cycle. Your cycle has to occur and have those natural ebbs and flows. And you have to have ovulation eventually as well, as part of a healthy cycle. I know some people struggle with anovulation, and there's different reasons why you might not be ovulating, but I just mean, I'm not talking about those kind of situations. I'm talking about the difference between being on hormonal birth control and not being on hormonal birth control, because you're not going to ovulate, or you're not going to go through a complete cycle if you have the birth control. And you're not going to be able to understand your cycle because you don't have a cycle that's happening. That's basically is what my point is. And I'm not trying to shame anybody or say that that's bad or tell you anything about that. I just want to make sure that it's clear that just that you're not going through a cycle. So the same information wouldn't apply. But yeah, so you need to be able to understand your menstrual cycle and your natural cycle that's happening. And that can happen through a lot of different routes. And if you're new to the podcast, you can scroll back to my fertility awareness method series where I interviewed several different women who coach other people in understanding their menstrual cycle and fertility awareness and a variety of methods that you can use that. So I have someone from Temp Drop to talk about basal body temperatures. There's talking about the Creighton method and using your mucus to track your fertility and your cycle overall, like physical indicators. I had someone talking about I already said basal body temperature. Okay, so I know I did 4 interviews and now it's escaping me, but just go back and listen to those episodes and you could get an idea of maybe like a route that might work for you and be beneficial for you. Obviously, like I said, today is the first time I am posting to YouTube. So if you ever want to go back and listen to an old episode prior to this one today, you'll have to just go back and listen to it on a podcast platform. But luckily for you, I am available on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, literally anywhere you can get podcasts. Also, a way that I personally could help when it comes to your body and understanding your hormones is that I have developed a cycle journal, and I'm not going to give like a whole long spiel about it, but if you're interested in starting tracking your menstrual cycle this year, and that's one of the habits you want to get into, I took my personal experience with following the Creighton method, but also my experience with talking to other professionals and talking to my own doctors, and developed a journal that basically you can use to track not only your menstrual cycle, but also other biomarkers and other aspects of your life and your health that could indicate like a hormonal imbalance or that like something isn't normal. So I will link the Etsy page to that in my show notes as well. You can also buy it on my website, but through Etsy is probably easier. So if you're interested, you can check that out there. But that's kind of one of the things that I've developed just to help you be able to track your cycle. And I do want to come out with a digital version soon, but currently it's only physical. Personally, I think it's a lot easier to track your menstrual cycle physically on a piece of paper and with a pen and colored pencils and all of that. But I know some people are just really digital and grew up on an iPad or they're just really savvy when it comes to those kind of things, like tech savvy with that, like calendars and whatnot. So I do plan to come out with a digital version very soon. But if you want a discount code to use to purchase my cycle journal, you can DM me on Instagram and I will send you a discount code. So anyways, that's how I can help with your health. And those are the kind of health and body things that are going to be important, that you could choose different aspects of to like start focusing on in order to balance your hormones. And then the next up is going to be the nutrition portion. And with that, there's a few things. So when it comes to nutrition, especially my personal approach, I am a food first person. There's a lot of supplements. People recommend a lot of supplements or a lot of like superfood, like specific health foods that are really expensive or difficult to access. And I don't like to promote those. Actually, I'm pretty sure I never promote them. If you choose to go that route, that is up to you. But I just don't think that supplements, there's not a lot of testing around them and there's not a lot of consistency in the supplement itself. And also if you just start taking them willy-nilly on your own, you don't want to be taking things that counteract each other, or they could possibly even like block each other out, or some you need to take on an empty stomach, some you need to take whatever. There's a lot of rules to supplements, and I don't think they're like regulated super well. And personally, I just want to get as much of my nutrients as possible from food sources. So I know there's a little bit of, I don't know, maybe that sounds a little bit snooty of me or something, but I don't know. That's just my approach. That's how I live my life. So if you want advice from someone who is a food first approach, and pretty like common foods that you're going to find in just like a regular grocery store, then I'm your person, because that's what I do. Showing you how to cook and eat at home and those kind of things. If you are someone who wants to take a bunch of supplements and all of that, like, you can still listen to my advice, of course. And it'll still support your body for sure, but it's not going to include that kind of stuff. So I just think food first whenever possible is helpful. And I do know, like, sometimes supplements are better, like, especially when you're first starting out, to get the higher, more concentrated doses. But yeah, it's not something I'm going to prescribe or recommend personally. So I talk a lot about food and a lot about the nutrients that you can find in food. I think food tastes great. I think we all need to be eating more nutrients. Unfortunately, our food has become more depleted in nutrients over time because of how we care for like our soil and all of that. But again, I'm not going to get into that. I just know, like, I try to eat my nutrients. That's that. And also, when it comes to the nutrition, is like, you have to be willing to be dedicated to it. So what is really important in your life, and what do you want to make the time for, and what is going to serve you and your ideal self and your ideal habits. So again, this goes back to what I was talking about at first, is the changes that I choose to make in my life are going to be lifelong habits that I incorporate day to day, that I do on a regular basis. It's not something where I'm going to be like falling off the train tracks and like I have to get back on. It's just something I want to be natural in my life. And so it's like, where is your dedication? Where do you want to put your time and your energy? Because of course, like, up front, it is, if you're someone who's used to like eating all of your meals out, it's a big change to start incorporating more meals at home and cooking for yourself. It might seem like a big time commitment and it's a lot to learn. But I promise that it's worth it. And if it's something that's important to you, you have to make the time for it, because, and I mean, that's all there is to it. You just have to make the time for it. And you can do semi-homemade, of course, and you can take shortcuts, and it doesn't have to be every single day and every single meal and every single moment, because that's not how I live my life. That's not balanced. That's not healthy. It's just like, again, you want it to be just a regular habit that easily ebbs and flows in your life and easily works with your lifestyle. So it has to be something you're willing to put the time into. If it's the difference between 15 or 20 minutes at night, taking the time to set yourself up a lunch for the next day, to make sure you're prepared and you have a plan, rather than like laying on the couch and watching TV for those like extra 15 or 20 minutes. So relaxing is important, and stress is a huge portion of negativity towards your hormones and can cause a lot of harm to your health overall. So I don't want it to be something that's really stressful and pressureful, but just knowing and reminding yourself in a healthy way, in a balanced way, what it is you're trying to accomplish. Because the nutrition portion isn't easy. And sometimes I recommend foods that might not be your favorite. But maybe you just need to try a new recipe or something that you've never had before. Or you just need to try a new cooking technique, or just have a more open mindset. A lot of times as a dietitian, people come to me and they want to know, like, well, this is my end goal desire. And like, can you make me a meal plan, or how can I get there, or whatever? And then I start to make recommendations. I don't make meal plans. I don't anything, but if I'm having a casual conversation with someone, and I might start making recommendations, or I'll throw like one or two foods out there, and then instantly they'll be like turned off by that. And they're like, oh, I don't like that. Or, oh, I don't eat that food. Or, oh, that's so difficult to eat, whatever the case may be. Like Brussels sprouts, for instance, like, if someone wants to struggles with really high estrogen, this would be like an example I might give, or something that might come up. So someone really struggles with elevated estrogen levels, and they're having a really hard time getting things balanced and they really want to balance out their hormones, something that can help your estrogen levels and help your body to better metabolize your estrogen so that you get better use out of your estrogen and you get more of the like positive, healthy estrogen in your system and like excrete more of the like negative estrogen and excess estrogen that you don't need. But there is a component in cruciferous vegetables that is abbreviated the letters DIM. And this component is what helps to metabolize those healthy estrogens. And so, I might recommend to someone like, oh, you're struggling with your estrogen, something that has been like, is evidence-based that there's like support for is begin incorporating more cruciferous vegetables in your diet. So I might tell them like, yeah, if you start eating Brussels sprouts like one time a week or two times a week, that would be a really great start to be helping with your estrogen levels. And then their response would be, in this example of what I'm trying to set up here, their response would be like, well, I don't like Brussels sprouts, or, oh my gosh, Brussels sprouts smell terrible. And it's like, well, okay, that's okay if you don't like Brussels sprouts. Like, let's be open-minded. Let's think about what else we could do. Like, Brussels sprouts are not the only cruciferous vegetable. They're not the only source of DIM. Let's think of another vegetable in that same family that you do like, that you could start eating 2 times a day. Just kind of processing through that information for yourself so that you can make the change work for your life, but also like, oh, well, maybe you've only ever had steamed Brussels sprouts from the freezer section, like in the bag, and like you think they smell terrible, so you've never tried them, or they're just really mushy. But if you roast Brussels sprouts and make them like charred and add like some vinegar and some honey or some, those kind of flavors or some soy sauce, that kind of thing, to develop like a deeper flavor, it's completely different than like a steamed or boiled Brussels sprout. Or on the other hand, something else I love about Brussels sprouts is eating them shaved and raw. So like really thin slice, or throw them in your blender or your food processor. And again, they have a really different flavor and they don't have that smell that cooked Brussels sprouts gives off. So yeah, there's always kind of a way around it, and there's always like another solution. So don't just completely turn your nose up at an idea from the start, is my point. Like, if I recommend something and you don't like it, feel free to send me a message and ask me for like other ways around it or another option, or if I have any cooking recipes. So how else I can help in the nutrition portion? Of course, I share this kind of information all over the place. I like to make TikToks and Instagram posts about different food I'm making. I get on my stories and show like my meals from time to time throughout the day, and talk on my podcast as well. And also something that just came out this Sunday for the first time and will be available to people every week is I have an email list, and on that email list every week, you get what's called the Better Bites newsletter. This is all I'm sending out. I'm not doing anything with people's emails here, but I take one nutrient to focus on every week, and then I break it down to like, where are some places you can find that nutrient, and then what are some tips for how you can use that nutrient. So this past week, I did vitamin D. I gave some examples on like kind of some background on vitamin D, how it affects your hormones. Then I gave like, where can you find vitamin D? And then how can you like use techniques to use this food better? So if you want to be involved in that and you would like to receive the Better Bites newsletter as well, again, I will put a link in the show notes, and you just put your email address in, and then you're all signed up for free to receive the newsletter every week, which also includes other things as well, but that's kind of like the main like meat and potatoes to the newsletter. So basically just being connected on all the different platforms. And you can also find all of these things like cross-referenced on my other social media pages. But yeah, I think then that was everything that I was going to discuss. We talked about habits versus goals. And then we talked about where to get started and the importance of your health and your body portion of your hormones, and then also the importance of your nutrition portion of your hormones, and kind of how me as a hormone dietitian, but also someone with a lot of personal experience and also spends a lot of time reading the research and applying it to my own life. I feel like I can be a really great resource for you. So I am really so grateful to have you here with me. Again, like I said at the top of the episode, please make sure you're following or subscribed to the podcast so that you are notified whenever I post new episodes. They're supposed to come out every Tuesday morning. So there's that. And yeah, come find me on Instagram or TikTok, or join the newsletter as well. All those things down in the show notes. And I really hope that this has helped you in your life. You've got some good ideas, being 1% better and not like stretching yourself for the year, not feeling down. It's January 3rd. It's okay if you haven't changed your whole life and you're not a new person from when you were on, 11:59 p.m. on December 31st. So all of that being said, thank you so much for being here. And I hope that this has helped you to make better bites. Have a great week.